My free history. Little Jimmy is still working on a farm. The training there has made him big and strong. Now he is Big Jim and ready to join the Janissaries and serve the Sultan. Big Jim feels a little uneasy. What exactly is this Janissary Corps that he is supposed to join? First, we will explain the units of the Janissary Corps to Big Jim. This will tell him which troops he might join and how many companions might share his fate. This is important because his new social group will be the whole purpose of his life. When the ordinary recruit had finished his training, he was enrolled in his order, and its number and symbol were tattooed on his arm and leg and hopefully his soul. The order was the basic military unit of the Janissaries, but it was much more than that. It was a family embedded in a bigger tribe called Ocak. The self-image of the core of the Janissaries was not only that of a military elite, but that of an independent social group, what can be seen through its self-designation of Hearth. It reflected its nomadic tradition, where the chieftain was responsible for supplying his followers with food, as well as its self-perception as a clan. The concept of the Hearth was an integral part of the Janissaries' self-image. We will hear a lot about it in this episode. For now, we have learned about the Ocak and the Order, the two basic units of the Janissary Corps. This leads us to the organization of the Corps. When studying it, you must keep in mind that it developed over the centuries. Reforms and social development changed the structures, the functions of the officers and the Janissaries themselves. We will discuss the structure formed under the reign of Suleiman when the Ottoman Empire reached its zenith. As we have already heard, the whole corps was called Ocak, which means hearth. Its subunit were 3 divisions. The name of the first division was Bölük, which means, well, division. It was the personal division of the overall commander of the Janissaries, the Aga, and had 63 otters. The second division was the Segmen or Segban, which means dog handlers, because the first task was to care for the Sultan's hunting dogs. It seems very strange to me that a unit in this important position was named after religiously impure animals. These 32 otters were distinctive red boots. We must be very careful here. Later on, another unit called Segban developed, but it consisted only of provincial infantry and did not have the professional status of the Janissaries. The third and final division had the name Jemaat, which can be translated as gathering. This is a fitting name since with 101 otters it was the biggest division. The name sounds similar to the term of Devshirme, since both words mean gathering. Nevertheless, I found no sources referencing it directly to Devshirme. The Jemaat otters could be recognized by their yellow boots. They mostly garrisoned fortresses. In addition, there were 34 additional otters consisting of new recruits. From those, the regular otters drew their replacements. This gives us an absolute number of 196 regular otters, but actually the 196 otters became 195 when after the killing of Osman II, Murad IV decided to punish the 65th otter for taking part in this regicide. Now, let's investigate the otters more closely. In early times an otter had around 50 men each, but this number rose to 100 in the 16th century, although the number rose even further with time. Hechelhammer gives a maximum of 400 men, but I think I've also seen a number somewhere that was around 3000. Unfortunately, I cannot find a source for this anymore. I should add a caveat here. By the 17th century, Janissaries also served as garrison troops. Therefore, the corps lost some coherence. The troops in North Africa were virtually independent Ocak and pirates. In bigger cities, the Janissaries became more and more alienated. Nicole gives the example of Damascus, where the governors formed their own Janissary troops. We have already talked about some ranks, positions and power relationships. Let's seize the opportunity and take a closer look at this. The commander of the Janissaries had the Turkish name of Andrew Agassi. No, I'm sorry. It was not Andrew, but the Janissary Agassi, which translates as Aga of the Janissaries. Aga is an honorific title and can be translated as Lord or Sir. The Sultan selected the Aga personally. Usually, he was a graduate of the palace school. In the beginning, this officer was a member of the Corp. Later on, the Aga became a high dignitary under the direct command of and with high influence on the Sultan. Even a Grand Vizier could not order him directly. This privilege was reserved to the Sultan only. Nevertheless, the Aga was only allowed to command the Ocak if the Sultan was present. Otherwise, he was just a deputy to the commander appointed by the Sultan. This probably was some kind of security measure. Furthermore, the Aga was a member of the Sultan's personal council, the Divan, and had its own council of officers, of which each commanded his own order. Let's look at this Divan, which basically was a group of councillors or ministers. At the top was, of course, the Aga of the Janissaries. Below him was the slave overseer, who had the functions of a chief of staff. Then there were ranks equal to a modern-day lieutenant general. The name of the ranks derived from the original tasks. There were the head keeper of the dogs, the head keeper of the mastiffs, the head keeper of the greyhounds, the head keeper of the grains. I think it is obvious which tasks they had in the early times of these ranks. All of them had to care for the hunting animals of the Sultan. In addition, every one of them commanded his own unit. The keeper of the dogs commanded the Sekban division. The keeper of the mastiffs commanded the 71st Order. The keeper of the greyhounds commanded the 64th Order, which was an extraordinary unit since it was lance cavalry. And the keeper of the grains commanded the 73rd Order. In addition, some sources name the head of all messengers, who was the general paymaster, as well as the provost of the Janissaries, who commanded the 5th Order, as members of the Aga's Divan. Now let's turn to the ranks in the orders. All orders shared the same basic internal structures and ranks, and here is where Big Jim comes in again. Because he is getting really hungry, and surprisingly, this fits to our topic perfectly. Remember that Ocak means hearth? This goes back to the nomadic tradition, when a leader had to provide at least one meal per day to his men. The Janissary's name for the Sultan was even the father who feeds us. And this theme continued with the officers of every order. The names mostly derived from kitchen-related tasks. We will discuss these ranks now, but please be aware that I've found numerous ranks in the translation. Since I would butcher the Turkish pronunciation anyway, I'm only going to provide a fitting English translation and a probably modern-day rank equivalent, although the relative status of the officers can only be guessed. I'm basing my personal guess on Hechelhammer and Weinstein. On top was the soup maker, whom we may compare to a modern-day captain, although I have also seen him ranking as a colonel. He had a first lieutenant, the chief cook. After him came the chief water carrier, equivalent to a second lieutenant. Then there was the chef, a master sergeant. Surprisingly, there also were some outsiders whose ranks were not related to food. For example, the chief of the barrack rooms, a NCO. There were more officers, especially NCOs, and also some other fun ranks like the first kitchen boy. In every order there also were some imams, scribes and others. But of course a recruit would not enter the Janissary Corps with one of these high ranks. Therefore we have to look at the rank and file troops. They had their own hierarchy according to seniority. The oldest were the sitters, who were pensioners and would hardly have to go on campaign. These guys were permitted to enter a trade and marry. After them came the veterans, who had already proven their valor on the battlefield. Big Jim, on the other hand, would enter the Corps with the rank of a campaigner. This makes him one of the most expendable members of the whole organization. Therefore, we better go back to calling him Little Jim again. And this probably is a good place to take a look at what we learned today. The whole of the Janissary Corps was called Ocak, which means hearth, and is a remainder from nomadic times. The Ocak had 196 units called Order. They were split up into 3 divisions: the division of the Aga of the Janissaries, the division of the dog handlers, and the biggest division, which was called Gathering. The Aga of the Janissaries, with the support of his staff, commanded the Ocak. This made him one of the most powerful men in the empire. He was only second to the Sultan. Even a great vizier could not give him orders. In the authors, many ranks had kitchen-related names. This strange fact is rooted in the nomadic history of the Ottomans. The ranks of officers as well as enlisted men were determined by seniority. And now it's your turn again. Was there anything going on in the heads of the Janissaries other than food? What do you think? So long, we'll meet again in 2 weeks. Stay critical, stay curious, stay free.